Hi, welcome to Listen2Riches. The book I'll be interpreting for you today is titled, Who's Pulling Your Strings? How to Break the Cycle of Manipulation and Regain Control of Your Life. This book primarily explores how we can identify manipulative behaviors in our interpersonal interactions and regain control over our own lives, freeing ourselves from manipulation. The author of this book, Harriet Braiker, is a clinical psychologist and management consultant from the United States. With nearly 30 years of clinical experience, she has encountered numerous patients suffering from severe psychological issues stemming from interpersonal relationship difficulties. Some have endured prolonged periods of depression and have been trapped in continuous cycles of stress. Others have only come to realize the need for psychological help when they've found themselves entirely controlled by others, akin to puppets on strings. Drawing from her extensive clinical experience, the author initially wrote a book called The Pleaser, which explored why some individuals habitually adopt a people-pleasing persona and even coined the term pleaser syndrome. However, this journey did not stop there. Following the publication of her book, she founded an online platform to engage with those accustomed to pleasing others. Unexpectedly, she received an influx of pleas for help through the website. The author discovered that those being manipulated weren't exclusively individuals who habitually please others. Manipulative behaviors were more prevalent than previously thought, and the manipulation process was insidious, resembling the onset of a chronic illness with an incubation period. Even as a psychologist, the author herself experienced the profound harm that manipulation inflicts on one's self-esteem, emotions, and mental well-being. As a result, she realized the necessity of developing a set of methods to resist manipulation, helping more people understand their vulnerabilities, recognize how they fall into manipulative relationships, and take action to break free from these entanglements. In essence, this book serves as a guide to avoiding traps and self-rescue. Next, I'll divide the book into two parts for your comprehension. In the first part, we will delve into how manipulation occurs. Before answering this question directly, let's first explore the common characteristics of those who enjoy manipulating others. These individuals can be categorized into two major groups. The first group is likely already on your mind. They usually have clear goals, are persistent in their pursuits, and exhibit dominant traits. However, what's truly intriguing is the second group, as they often unconsciously engage in manipulation. So, what do these individuals look like? The author lists various personality traits in the book, including borderline personality disorder and dependent personality disorder. Let's briefly discuss these traits. For example, individuals with borderline personality disorder often experience fluctuating self-perceptions and emotions. They fear abandonment and primarily manipulate by eliciting negative emotions in others. In short, they employ tactics to make others conform to their expectations, making the other person uncomfortable if they don't. Imagine having someone in your life who has high expectations of you and is nearly flawless in their demeanor. Would you not carefully consider every action and word to avoid offending them? Moreover, if you fail to provide adequate care and security, they might immediately undergo an emotional shift, even attacking you only to apologize afterward. Over time, you may find your behavior and words gradually aligning with their expectations. Dealing with individuals with volatile emotions can be extremely challenging. Another typical manipulator is someone with dependent personality disorder. They often exhibit an excessive need for care, so during prolonged interactions, you may discover that they rely on you for almost everything, from minor matters like food choices to significant decisions such as career choices. If you happen to reject their requests, they may display extreme helplessness, desperately needing your support as life seems hopeless without it. Imagine spending a considerable amount of time with such a person. It undoubtedly becomes exhausting. However, if you choose to ignore them, guilt may creep in. So, when dealing with such individuals, is there no escape? One might suggest that we can simply distance ourselves from these individuals to avoid manipulation. However, reality is often more complicated. The challenge lies in the fact that, at times, we simply cannot choose to avoid contact with these individuals. They might be family members, colleagues, mentors, or bosses, among others. What's more, manipulators frequently conceal their tactics beneath layers of lies. It's often difficult to detect even during initial encounters. Typically, they employ certain phrases such as, "I'm doing this for your well-being and care," aiming to convince you that their actions are in your best interest. Or, "I'm advising you to do this because it's my duty," highlighting their sense of responsibility. In the course of your interaction, even if you harbor slight doubts, they will go to great lengths to dismiss your concerns. Ultimately, this can leave you feeling torn between doubting them and being unable to reasonably counter their arguments, resulting in feelings of guilt and a need to compensate. Alright, let's return to our initial question: how does manipulation happen? This book mentions several scenarios which can be broadly categorized into 3 types. The first type is positive reinforcement, also known as coercion within the context of threats and intimidation. In this situation, manipulators use continuous threats to force you into taking actions they desire. The second type is positive reinforcement as well, but it begins with small favors or benefits and gradually exploits you through minor actions. When you perform well, they promise more tempting rewards, but this requires a long-term commitment. Despite the seemingly attainable rewards, you eventually realize it's nothing more than an empty promise. The most intriguing type is the third one, known as intermittent reinforcement. Let's begin with a short anecdote. You may have heard that wooing someone isn't just about sending flowers but writing love letters to them every day. After a period of continuous letter writing, you suddenly stop. The person you're wooing would undoubtedly feel uneasy, filled with questions, wondering what went wrong. Subsequently, they begin to analyze your thoughts, trying to decipher your feelings. While this is just a story, it's rooted in solid scientific evidence. The core of this intermittent reinforcement method lies in breaking the cycle of continuous positive reinforcement by changing the frequency and predictability of behavior. It transforms continuous, predictable reinforcement into intermittent, sporadic, and unpredictably random reinforcement. This change affects how the manipulated perceives the manipulator. Given enough time, the manipulated might even become addicted to this sense of unpredictability. We can illustrate the effects of intermittent reinforcement through a set of experiments. Scientists placed 2 pigeons in separate cages and trained them to obtain food by pecking at a lever. One pigeon was in the control group and received continuous positive reinforcement. The other pigeon, known as Pigeon 2, was in the experimental group and received intermittent reinforcement. Pigeon 1 in the control group quickly developed a habit of pecking the lever after continuous positive reinforcement. Pigeon 2 in the experimental group also formed this habit after approximately 10 instances of positive reinforcement. However, scientists later altered the experiment rules by gradually extending the time intervals before providing food, implementing intermittent reinforcement. This intermittent reinforcement caused Pigeon 2 to continue pecking the lever persistently even when there was no reward until it became exhausted. In contrast, Pigeon 1 in the control group soon ceased its continuous behavior as it had grown accustomed to the predictability of rewards. Ultimately, when scientists stopped providing food to both pigeons, the continuous behavior of Pigeon 1 in the control group quickly ceased because it had become accustomed to the continuous positive reinforcement and understood that the rewards had ended. However, in the experimental group, Pigeon 2 continued pecking the lever until it was exhausted because it couldn't predict when the reward would come. Just like how the manipulated become accustomed to the hope of intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable rewards can create addictive behavior. This experiment vividly demonstrates the powerful impact of intermittent reinforcement, sustaining the manipulated's hope in the manipulator, much like a pigeon's desire for uncertain rewards. The author mentions cases where individuals become entangled in manipulative relationships. Gradually, they lose control over their emotions and their work and life become chaotic. Initially, these relationships may seem delightful, with the person pleasing their partner who responds with sweet words or gifts, expressing love. However, as time passes, they notice that, despite their deep love, the positive responses from their partner become scarcer and the partner's emotional shifts become unpredictable. Sometimes they become distant, while at other times they express affection suddenly. This inconsistent behavior torments them. The method of intermittent reinforcement is truly agonizing. Compared to continuous and consistent reinforcement, intermittent reinforcement inflicts more anxiety and stress on the manipulated. This uncertainty nourishes endless anxiety and stress. However, we should also note that escaping a manipulative relationship requires the manipulated to realize their role and take proactive steps to change the situation. Only through personal transformation can one truly break free from the influence of manipulation, regain autonomy, and reshape their life. In the second part, we will explore who is susceptible to becoming the target of manipulators and how one can completely extricate themselves from such a relationship. The author has found that manipulators generally target individuals who exhibit common weaknesses in their personalities. These individuals may be excessively kind, easily influenced by others, or going through significant life transitions such as job promotions, breakups, or marriages, which can make them vulnerable. These weaknesses can be summarized into three aspects. Firstly, an excessive focus on others. This is manifested through several characteristics. They are accustomed to pleasing others, tend to seek approval and acceptance from others, and often struggle with saying no. Most of these individuals will go to great lengths to fulfill others' expectations, even at the expense of their own well-being. They believe that gaining the favor and recognition of others is more important than anything else. When they do refuse someone, they feel guilty and immediately question whether they are being too selfish. Secondly, excessive self-neglect. This can be seen in the following traits. They have a vague self-awareness, lack clear self-awareness, often doubt their judgment and reactions, and believe that most things in life are influenced more by others or external factors rather than being under their control. These individuals may have a blurred sense of self-perception due to a difficult childhood or a tendency to rely on others' advice to make decisions, hoping to reduce the likelihood of making mistakes by seeking multiple opinions. Thirdly, an excessive sensitivity to negative emotions. This can manifest in the following ways. They are willing to do anything to avoid conflict and confrontation in relationships and may agree to the manipulator's demands at any cost. When the manipulator raises their voice or hints at an impending conflict, they may feel anxious and even imagine scenarios of arguments in their minds. As a result, they compromise with the manipulator's demands. Worse still, the more they try to avoid negative emotions, the more difficult it becomes, gradually lowering their own boundaries. However, it's important to note that the formation of a manipulative relationship requires the collusion of at least two people, one willing to manipulate and the other willing to be manipulated. The one being manipulated often receives a certain level of positive reinforcement through compliance. Therefore, only when they genuinely change themselves rather than attempting to change the manipulator can they break free from this relationship. The liberation from a manipulative relationship requires the individual being manipulated to realize their role and take proactive action to change themselves, thereby escaping the influence of manipulation, regaining autonomy, and reshaping their life. The author summarizes 7 resistance strategies in the book, with each step detailed in terms of what to do and say at each stage. For your convenience, I've integrated the author's methods into an 8-character mnemonic called delay, acknowledge, endure, break, establish. These steps are progressive and mutually supportive. The more steps you employ when resisting the manipulator, the stronger your resistance will be. Delay refers to the first step, where you must avoid immediately agreeing to the manipulator's demands but instead delay your response. The key in the initial stages is to create a gap between the manipulator's request and your reaction. Even if you don't have a clear idea at the moment, allocate time to change your perspective, breaking the habit of automatically complying with the manipulator's demands. In the first round, to gain a momentary respite, try to communicate with the manipulator via phone. When the manipulator presents their demand, you can find excuses like, "I have something going on here, I need to step away for a moment, I apologize." In face-to-face situations, you can calmly interrupt and state that you need to make an urgent call, fetch something from your office, or pour a cup of coffee or water. These actions take only a few minutes and allow you to temporarily leave the environment. The manipulator will likely oppose your delaying tactics, perhaps by raising their voice, displaying anger, or complaining about your indifference, attempting to induce guilt. As you enter the second round, if the manipulator repeats their previous demand, you can express that you've heard and understood their message. You can directly say, "I know you may be surprised or upset, but I do need some time to consider. I'll get back to you when I've made up my mind." The rest is essentially repeating the same actions as before. Even if the manipulator becomes angry or blames you for your delay, refrain from apologizing and continue to express your need for time to think. This is your right. After conveying your decision, you can bid farewell and then hang up the phone or leave directly. Throughout this process, avoid explaining why you need time to think or what you're thinking about, and don't specify when you'll respond. Remember, excessive words will cause you to lose control. Delay is the key to this strategy. Regardless of how you or the manipulator may feel, do not engage in arguments or disputes. Despite the manipulator's long-standing control over you, you are not a puppet but an individual with self-awareness. You've decided to sever the manipulative ties. The author suggests that the best way to practice this method is to write out scenario scripts and prepare yourself. These scripts may encompass situations that could arise in your life and will help you better deal with them, enhancing your sense of control. Based on your previous experiences with manipulators, you likely have an understanding of what manipulators might say when you refuse their requests. Simply jot down these responses and engage in role-playing exercises with people you trust. During these practice sessions, pay attention to body language, eye contact, the steadiness of your voice, volume, tone, and overall performance. Through continuous practice, you can better gauge where your boundaries lie. Practicing in high-pressure environments and repeating these exercises multiple times will better prepare you before actual implementation. Now onto the most crucial step, endure. This step entails tolerating certain negative emotions that make you extremely uncomfortable. At this stage, both sides will experience heightened negative emotions, but if you persist, the dynamics between you and the manipulator will undergo a significant shift. So far, both of you have had very short fuses for negative emotions, resulting in a situation where, once the manipulator displays anger, it ignites your anxiety, fear, or guilt. And this emotional cascade quickly reinforces the cycle of manipulation. You might be wondering, how much should you endure? Endure until they get impatient, until they utter something final, a feeling akin to when you hear phrases like, "If you don't agree, we're breaking up," or "If you persist in not listening to me, we're cutting off the mother-daughter relationship." Know that, in previous instances, your response mechanism may have automatically adjusted to emergency mode, much like a sudden level 3 fire alarm. However, there is no real emergency. This sense of urgency is manufactured by the manipulator's creation of a climate of fear and your excessive sensitivity to negative emotions. Even if you don't immediately quell the anxiety, fear, and guilt stirred up by the manipulator, it won't lead to your self-destruction. What specific methods can you use to deal with these negative emotions? In such situations, it's challenging to relax. The author suggests that habitual practice is the best way to resist these negative emotions. The process involves first recalling at least 3 scenarios, using vivid memories, and writing down each example in detail. Pay particular attention to describing the language and actions that made you uncomfortable, as well as your fear, anxiety, and guilt during those moments. Next, you can read these contents aloud into a recording device. The purpose of this is to recreate the anxiety, fear, and guilt you felt at that time. Then choose a relaxing environment, such as lying on a comfortable sofa with your prepared recording device nearby. After taking a few minutes for deep breathing preparation, focus your attention on your arms and legs, concentrating on the thought that my arms and legs are becoming warm and heavy. After 2 to 3 minutes of relaxation breathing, you can start listening to the first recorded segment. Throughout the process, continue to maintain deep breathing, feeling the relaxation in your limbs and vividly reliving those scenarios in your mind, trying to coexist with those negative emotions. After the first recording segment ends, firmly remember the scene you've just reenacted and tell yourself, I indeed feel very uncomfortable, but I can endure them. Combining this habitual practice of relaxation with scenario recall allows you to confront and desensitize yourself to excessive sensitivity to negative emotions. The author recommends completing these exercises at least twice a day for 1 to 2 weeks. Manipulators often employ various tactics to exert pressure and attempt to elicit the anxiety, guilt, and fear you have become accustomed to during actual interactions. Braiker refers to labeling the manipulator's behavior, transforming their scheme into a positive plan, and directly breaking the manipulative relationship. Now that you've endured the peak of negative emotions, it's time to puncture this layer of paper. For a manipulative relationship to continue, the default agreement between you and the manipulator must remain unchanged, and the manipulator's right to manipulate will persist. Therefore, at this point, you need to counter with direct language. You can accurately tell the manipulator what they have done and how it has made you feel. Most manipulators will take a step back because their deceptive tactics have been exposed and they have encountered resistance. If you find it challenging to articulate the manipulator's behavior clearly, or if you're unsure about what to say in face-to-face scenarios, what can you do? The author provides a specific script that can be broken down into 4+1 sentences. First, you list out the manipulative behavior, express your feelings about it, and consider better alternatives. Then you can say, if you continue using this approach, my feelings will be. For example, if a wife is heavily manipulated by her husband, at this stage, he can say, when you raise your voice and yell at me, I feel scared and anxious. If you could stop shouting and calmly express your needs, I would feel respected. In these first 4 sentences, you neither agree to nor refuse the manipulator's request. Instead, you explicitly state their manipulative tactics. The purpose of this is to explain your emotional response, so at least this time, the manipulator knows you mean business. So, you pass the ball back to the manipulator to determine whether their manipulation is conscious or unconscious and whether they are willing to change. If they are unwilling to change, then you are clear that their intention in using these tactics is to make you experience these negative emotions. So, you can use the final killer sentence to label their behavior and express your stance. You can directly tell them, I know what you want me to do, but your threats don't work anymore. The last step, establish, is about redefining the boundaries of your relationship. Because you've done so much in the previous steps to set your terms, making it clear what you are willing and unwilling to do in your relationship and telling the manipulator what methods are effective and unacceptable to you. Then you can discuss whether there's a mutually acceptable way forward. However, at this stage, you should also be prepared mentally. The manipulator may only want to continue the relationship on their terms where they have the final say for the relationship to be established. In practical terms, your demands have become a test of the relationship's worth. If you find that the manipulator's sole purpose in maintaining the relationship is to continue their manipulation and exploitation, then you must be prepared to leave. Leaving may be the best choice. Even if the manipulator shows a willingness to change, don't expect the relationship to self-correct overnight. The manipulator needs time to learn new behaviors and better ways to express their needs. But your patience, perseverance, and determination will bring new hope. Let's recap the content we just discussed together. We talked about the 8-character mantra: delay, endure, label, establish. First, delay to buy time, then practice tolerating negative emotions. After enduring the most challenging period, label the manipulator's behavior and directly break the relationship. Finally, establish new boundaries. Each step must be accompanied by a lot of role-playing exercises and strong preparation. Lastly, we have a long and arduous task of self-improvement. We must put in a lot of effort to clear the viruses from our cognition, identify our soft thought patterns, and toughen ourselves up. The author provides a corrected version of strong thinking for each weakness we discussed earlier. I strongly recommend that you write these down in a notebook, recite them out loud regularly, especially when you feel anxious. It will undoubtedly help you alleviate negative emotions. Let me read one sentence from the book as an example, such as the soft thought pattern, I should do what others expect of me to make them happy. The corrected strong thinking is, I know I can't please everyone and make everyone happy. It's neither possible nor realistic. I want others to like me for my personal qualities, not just for what I do for them. Congratulations on finishing another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to Listen2Riches, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom with practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future. Thank you all. See you in the next episode.